You too.
How long ago did we do something about 5 years or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah. Goodness. Oh my. Thing with my lights over here. I don't know. Okay.
So what are the posters, two posters in the background?
Yes, one of them, the yellow one is Guinevere. It's a costume design,
What
you
you
know.
wore?
And then the other one is Dick Van Dyke in The Music Man. It's a little picture of me in the back, but yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to
I wanted to see if you could see these, because shall I take the, yeah.
yes, well, that's great. Is that Hirschfeld? Is that a Hirschfeld?
That's a Hirschfeld, it is, yeah, from Brigadoon. And this is from, I just wanted to see if they could be seen okay, because I've got them sort of in order, but most of the pictures are on the website, so I don't have a lot of them in,
Okay.
so.
Okay, so I'm going to start now and introduce you.
Okay, wait, can you wait 1 second?
Sure.
Wait 1 second. I'm going to want to show this.
Okay.
That's from Westchester Broadway, which just closed.
Yes, I saw that. Yes,
Because of COVID, but that was the premiere of the Maury Yeston Arthur Kopit Phantom.
Right.
Which was my favorite role in the world. But anyway, okay, I'm all yours.
Okay. Here we go. Good afternoon. This afternoon, I'm very happy to have somebody I've known for over 5 years. She got together with me to do some recordings from a musical she appeared in, Something's Afoot. This is Meg Bussert. Good afternoon, Meg.
Hi, Bruce.
So tell us about growing up and how musical comedy or music came into your life.
I grew up in Illinois, Chicago at first, and then we moved out to the suburbs, Park Ridge, Illinois. And I always sang in church and everything else. And then when I got into high school, I started getting into the musicals and realized that I was maybe good, I don't know. And I had a real strong interest in it. So I decided in college to pursue a little bit of that. But way back then, which would have been the late 60s, there weren't a lot of programs. There were no programs around to become musical theater people. So I took a course of study called Communication Arts, Speech, and learned all about Shakespeare and a lot of drama. And
what school is this?
This was the University of Illinois when I was in college. High school was Maine South High School in Park Ridge.
What musicals did you do in high school?
High school, Oklahoma, Kiss Me Kate. I did some plays. I can't remember them now. I mean, I remember them. I can't remember the title. But I did a lot of. I was a thespian, so I was an honor thespian. So I did whatever they did.
But what made you decide one day this was going to be hopefully a career, or it might be a career?
College, I was doing play after play and musical after musical, and I just thought I would try. So I went out with like $200 in a duffel bag and a sewing machine, and found a place to live that was, $40 a month. And I started auditioning, and I actually started booking right away. So
this is coming to New York, and I'll talk about.
Right, yeah, right to New York. I came right to New York when I was 20.
There wasn't enough. I guess there wasn't that much at that time in Chicago nowadays.
Well, there was, but I didn't want to be home. I wanted to go to New York. I wanted to be Julie Andrews. I mean, that was my goal. I grew up listening to her and Barbara Cook and Mary Martin, and that's what I wanted to try. So.
And how long did it take you to find a place to stay?
Oh, I don't remember. Very, very quickly. There were, a lot of young people around. I knew a lot of young people who had relocated in New York. So, people from home. So started staying with friends, and, it was much easier then.
What was your first audition?
Oh gosh. I was working at a place out in Meadowbrook, New Jersey. And, you just go in and you sing. My first professional audition was actually for Lolita, My Love, which is what I booked. And it was like 600 young people auditioning, and then 90, this is 600 women auditioning, and then 90 were called back, and out of the 90, they chose, I think it was 8 female singers and 8 female dancers. And yeah, back in those days, they had, they would call them cattle calls. They wouldn't call them that today, but it was.
But did everyone line up? Did all 600 or so people line up and wait their turn?
Yeah, there was some sort of a typing. There was usually over several days, and they were huge calls, and they were usually at a Broadway theater, and there were equity calls and non-equity, and I would always go to the. Was
it the Hellinger? Wasn't that where the Lolita was ultimately headed?
Yes, that's where it was headed. I don't recall if the audition was there, because sometimes they would book other houses. You know.
What would you guess you might have auditioned with?
Excuse me?
What song would you guess you auditioned?
Oh, I usually sang How Are Things in Glockamora in a higher key than the one that Ella Logan did. I liked those kind of subtly Irish songs. So yeah, that was my big audition.
So you went from 600 to 90, and then from 90 to 15 or?
8.
8, well, 8 girls, and you're.
Yeah, and it was a combination, but through the winnowing process, it came down to some were equity, some were not. I was one of the non-equities, but I was hired and then got my equity card through that, so.
And tell us a little about what was the first day of rehearsal like? Were you seated around the table, and was there table reading, or is that too modern for that era?
No. There's definitely a table reading, but I was, in the ensemble. So the principals, I'm sure, had the table reading. We were brought into it a little later. I mean, there was certainly a meeting day when we all met. We sat down and we met the producers, the directors, the designers. They showed us the set. They showed us the ideas. So we got a chance to kind of meet each other, and then we kind of went off into our little sections and started working. And then about a week into it, the singers and dancers came in, and there was a reading, or there was, and then so we understood what was being said. And then we went off again in our little discrete units to prepare. And then slowly, little by little, we came together for the scene work. And it was very exciting. It was terrifically exciting.
But were you around to hear the principals rehearsing? And
later, not in the beginning, but later. Usually they put the whole thing
What
together.
was your impression of the score? Because it's one of my favorite scores.
I was so young, Bruce. I was just impressed with everything. So later, I came to understand that there were several songs in it which were quite meaningful, which is Broken Promised Land of 15 is one that keeps coming to me. The others, a lot of them were storytelling songs that, listed all the names. And a very little silly song when they went to camp, and so I was in no position to judge the music other than to just get very, very excited. What I did find out as I began to audition more and more was that I did have the type of voice that was in a category with Barbara Cook, in a category with Julie Andrews. So as I became a little more known and I started doing understudy work on Broadway, I started getting brought in for those roles, for those kind of, what would you call the classic golden age musicals, because I could sing them. So that even before I typed myself, that's my voice typed me. And that's the roles that I began to get. And through that, I learned so much about Rodgers and Hammerstein music and how they put things together, Lerner and Lowe, how they wrote and how they put things together, and what my role was in the storytelling with the music and everything. I got to know Meredith Willson, and so I understood what he was doing with, I began to understand what he was doing with the Music Man. So I was in a very fortunate position, kind of the tail end of that marvelous time in musical theater, because I was doing revivals of what had already been there. So my job was to take the story that was already there and not recreate a role or create a role for the first time, but to take what was there and work with the people I was working with and put my stamp on it, certainly. But it was a very exciting time. It was a very learning time for me. And now that I'm old and I've been through that experience, it's been terrific to the last 19 years I've been teaching acting at NYU in the music department for singers. So I've been able to take the older music and make the young people today kind of understand what Rodgers and Hammerstein wanted, you know, what Lerner and Lowe wanted. It's a little different than Hamilton. It's a little different than Evan Hansen. Those are brilliant pieces of musical theater, but working with the older genres and it's just a slightly different take, and that you have to really kind of understand what's going on in the music underneath you when you're singing. And I started paying attention to that and learning all that in Lolita, and then I was in the chorus of Irene, you know, with Debbie Reynolds, and later, oh, what's her name? Oh! Debbie Reynolds and, oh, it's terrible, it'll come to me. Jane Powell. Jane Powell, yes, oh my gosh.
Jane Powell actually lives in my town.
Yeah, oh, she's
Connecticut. She turned 90.
Oh my gosh, she's wonderful. But I learned so much from those ladies, you know, being in the chorus and watching them perform. And I've been very, very fortunate. And so I did 3 or 4 big Broadway chorus work. I was in the applause with, I went into it later with Betty, with Miss, give me her name. It's out of my head.
Bacall.
Yes, Lauren, we called her Betty, but yes, Betty Bacall, Lauren Bacall.
Did she ever talk to chorus people?
Oh, yes, she did. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. She absolutely, they were all approachable.
Were there meals or anything like that were shared?
Yeah, yeah, when we were on tour, absolutely. She made sure that we had a huge, big party when we were in LA, because it was the tour was what I did. And yeah, she was wonderful. She was terrific. Yeah.
But for Lolita, did you have the entire script in the beginning? Did you know?
No.
Did you get the novel to read?
I did. Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, I read that.
And did you tell your parents what this? Did your parents know about Lolita?
I do remember being a little cautious about what I said. Yeah.
Mom and Dad, I'm a nymphet.
Again, I was in the midst of it, so I had no, I wasn't in a position to judge, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. I mean, it was my first Broadway show, and I was so delighted to be, you know, a part of that community. It was later that I thought,
So I saw it in Philadelphia, and that girl, to my recollection, there's a recording of the Boston, where that is coming out again on Kreitzerland. You know, I also sell a copy of it, but the live recording, there's no live recording from Philadelphia.
Okay.
But I believe I like the approach to the show in Philadelphia better.
I don't even recall the differences.
So it's not that you said this is, did you at any time say the show is getting better, or just it's different?
Well, there was a young woman who was a little older. She was 16, who was the original Lolita, and that was uncomfortable. I recall them saying. And then there was a second young lady who was a little younger, which made it even more uncomfortable. So I don't, you know, I wasn't.
The first girl seems more naive and shy.
Uh-huh.
The second girl is a belter.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I'd like to think Lolita was not a belter, that she but talk to into things rather than
yes.
Mama has a boyfriend.
Well, I do recall the reviewers questioning, you know, saying, you know, this was kind of an interesting show, and they talked a lot about, you know, the different principles and how they came across. But I also recall them all saying, why? You know,
why is there? This is a least likely subject matter that, although, you know, Sweetie Todd and other things in a way works. Nobody is, well, no one's killed. There's an accident.
No, it was uncomfortable. You know, yeah. I mean, it's not you know, something that I want to pay money and sit down and see. You know, I have children. I don't want to go there. So.
But after the show got bad reviews in both cities, did they talk to the chorus and did they talk to everybody and say, we maybe have some changes in mind? And
Oh, I think I recall that they did that between the two cities. They brought us in and they did
Did they
re-rehearse.
re-rehearse? Yeah, you went back to New
Yeah,
York,
and then
right?
we went out again. And then when we came back, there was talk, we're going to get together and we'll let you know, we'll let you know, we'll let you know. And that time went by, and then eventually we got the call saying, we're done. It's not a go. Thank you so much for your participation, but it's not going to happen. So that was disappointing because it was a big job for all of us, but it certainly was.
You didn't see the recent revival at the York Theater?
No, I did not. No. Did you?
Oh, yes.
Did you like it?
Well, I thought it was, they tried to make it somewhat better by having him be with a psychiatrist and be told, that's not what a professor does.
Yeah.
And he feels guilty to show his guilt. But ultimately, nothing. I don't think they expected it to move anywhere. They just wanted people to be able to see it. And for the songs, if you disregard Broken Promised Land and the title song, Where Are You, Lolita, is a haunting song.
It is a haunting song, true.
The orchestrations. I wanted to record the show, so you might have been able to be, quite a number of years, maybe 10 years after the show. And we invited John Barry, composer, to come to a very small little apartment that a friend of mine had. And he said, well, of course I would love to have my music heard, but he said, you do know the orchestrations were thrown out. So I said, well, couldn't you just write them out again? He said, they weren't my orchestrations. And I think he could have, but it would have been so much, Eddie Sauter. Did you ever see The Orchestrator? I believe The Orchestrations are...
I wasn't. I was such a low person on the totem pole. I mean, later I knew who to look for and get to know, but certainly not then. It was very, very newbie.
He did 1776 and...
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, brilliant work, but I didn't get the opportunity to meet him. Yeah. 1776 is one of my favorite musicals. I, love that, That's very exciting music.
I saw the world premiere of that in New Haven, and the original approach to it, the instrumentation of Eddie Sauter, was rock and roll.
Really?
And it did not have it had a little patriotism in it, but not enough.
Huh.
But Peter Stone was in working on it, and of course he has long sections where there's no singing. And that's unusual. They have 15 minutes with not a note of music. And the other thing that's amazing is that, of course, they're going to pass.
Sure.
But everyone has to be in agreement. There was no majority or anything like that. All these people said, I will not let this pass unless we put something sort of pro-slavery. That was the biggest one. He said, I will never sign something unless a provision okaying slavery for the South.
Yeah.
And eventually they had to do that because that was the only way it passed.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting to see that on stage and to actually...
We're lucky that we have the movie. The movie is a wonderful representation of the musical. And it even has Ben Franklin, who wasn't on the cast album. He was out sick. So the original Ben Franklin is in the movie, but Howard DeSilva, did not get to make the cast album.
Wow. Yeah, that's truly a landmark musical, 1776. Yes.
What numbers were you involved in, Irene? You recall? What song?
Anytime there was, ensemble singing, I was pretty much in it. I was a young woman, so I was around in the camp stuff. And
so does that mean you have no lines whatsoever? You just
no lines whatsoever. I sang. That's correct. Yeah.
Nowadays, that's pretty unusual. There's no people coming. I sort of miss that. I like to have a few people singing, and then everyone comes on stage and they repeat.
Hmm. Well, those are still the days, you know, when there was a singing ensemble and a dancing ensemble and the acting, you know, and so they were quite discreet, quite separated. And you know, now they first of all can't afford to have that many people on stage anymore when we get back to it, you know. So it's the singers today have to do some more movement, and the dancers have to do singing. So you know, they kind of a little more is expected of them. The first thing I did after the show closed was get myself into dance classes because I knew that's what I needed to really work, and that helped because that allowed me, as the shift was happening in the business, to get more work because I was a singer who could move, you know, and I also had a strong background in acting and dramatic literature from school. I loved Shakespeare and all of, you know, the grand old classic movies, you know, with all those grand dams, you know, so I was very attuned to words and how they operate, especially in a musical, because when you're not singing and you are just speaking, it's very close to exactly what happens in a play. And you have to know how to handle the older shows, you know, Oklahoma, Carousel, Lolita, they had very long scenes. 1776, you know, they had long scenes. And the singing actor is going to have to come up to the level of what is necessary to make the spoken word work as well as the singing word.
Is it not true today that one can, if one is employed, one can do better monetarily wise and actually support oneself and live in New York compared to, I've heard of salaries not enabling you to have a 2-bedroom apartment?
You know, things are in an odd place right now. There has been no theater for 7 or 8 months in New York. New York is really hurting. The whole entertainment industry is. Before that, yeah, if you had a Broadway show, you had a very good salary. And if you were hired in a long run, that was wonderful. If you can go from show to show, that was also wonderful. Yeah, I mean, theater actors in general, sometimes you just can't support yourself with it. Sometimes you have to have yet another job. You know, I was able to do it with teaching. So, you know, initially I could support myself because it was just me. And then when you have a family and other people depending on you, it wasn't enough. So I moved into full-time teaching as well as some performing, you know, as I kind of moved from category to category in the business.
Tell us something about Something's Afoot. That's how you and I got together.
Yeah, that's a terrific. It's a parody of Agatha Christie, of the Mrs. Marple stories. It particularly focused on one which used to be called 10 Little Indians, and it isn't called that anymore. But it's a wonderful, if you know Agatha Christie, then you enjoy the parody even more. It's a play in which everybody dies in the end, but if I can say, in a humorous way. Yeah. So in the original story, everyone dies in the end except the lovers, the ingenue and the juvenile. They discover it and they live. They discover the plot. But in the parody, they die too. So that's the joke. It was very clever. Tony Tanner was the director. I was the understudy for 2 of the roles, the 2 ingenues. There were 4 women and 6 men in it. And Tony Tanner has had a marvelous background in English music hall. And music hall and vaudeville, American vaudeville, are similar, but there's little differences. And so this was, again, Agatha Christie coming from, you know, an English from Britain. So Tony was the perfect director for this. So it was, musical is just, I don't know, it's having taught musical theater history, I can show examples to my students and they could say, oh. It's a little more erudite, a little more literary, a little more Gilbert and Sullivan as opposed to Abbott and Costello, which was closer to our kind of vaudeville. So he was terrific in the directing, and like in the first 5 minutes, the butler dies. You know, something's afoot, but and then so the first big number is something's afoot, but the butler didn't do it because he's dead. You know, so it's just very silly. And how the ingenue is supposed to die, she's dancing around the stage, and the chandelier starts dropping from the ceiling, and she keeps going under it, and then she dances away from it, and then the scene, and the whole audience is going, and this was before
The Phantom.
yes, it's
You
before
didn't know how dangerous the chandelier.
so when we saw it in Phantom, well, they stole that from something. So oh no, it was very funny, but it was a terrific, again, another one. It wasn't a big hit. It kind of ran the summer in the Lyceum Theater, but it was one of those shows of great music. Each song, each character had one marvelous song that absolutely described their character. And it was very much like the princess shows, the shows of the early 20th century, where the characters would come out and tell you what their problem was within the song, and then it wasn't quite as story connected as Oklahoma and those kinds of things in the 40s, but it was very much, here I am, I'm the ingenue, and I'm an airhead, and the bad guy was Gary Beach played that, and just marvelous, and he had a song called The Legal Heir, he was going to get the money because he was the legal heir, and he was the bad guy from the beginning, and you knew that, there was no question, but he was such a wonderful bad guy, you loved him. So yeah, that was a fun show to be involved in.
Was there any talk of making a recording at that time? To do a recording? Say,
back in those days, they didn't just record. It was so expensive because you had to hire the full orchestra and come in the studio. Very, very different when digitalized things came in. And then, there was a point in the 80s where, I did Brigadoon in 81, and we were supposedly a flop. What we didn't know is they wanted to close us because 42nd Street was coming into the Majestic Theater. But that was another business thing. But, it's, I don't know, what was our topic?
About the recording, no one ever said.
Oh, the recordings. They didn't record Brigadoon then. It was very expensive, and if the show wasn't going to be
because there was no stereo recording of Brigadoon, and
no,
so a lot of times they didn't do the so-called sexy things. My mother's wedding day.
No recording. They didn't record that. They didn't record Something's Afoot because it had to be a hit then. It had to be something that they knew they could sell or tour. And it just didn't happen.
James McDonald was actually paid to record a new Something Afoot in England with English actors.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
They have Jim Dale plays the dead man.
Oh.
Has a few lines. Lord.
Yes, at the end. He comes out at the end. Yeah, and a recording. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, I bet Jim Dale is great in that. Oh, yeah. So yeah, you've done wonderful things in recording some of these things that have been lost, and
well, I'm thrilled that I could preserve what I can, and the Baker's Wife and Carmelina.
Yeah.
I work with these famous people, and it's just great.
Yeah.
Did you audition for many musicals? Would you routinely audition, even if? When you were in a show like Something's Afoot, would you keep auditioning?
Yeah, you audition pretty much for everything. I don't think I was ever given a role. Even when my name was out there, and people in the industry knew me, people outside the industry knew, I was one of the working lyric ingenues at the time. So no, you auditioned. That was the thing that always bothered me. It was like you reach this level and all of a sudden you start over again. So yeah, I auditioned for everything.
There must have been a competition to be the lead in Brigadoon.
Oh, there was competition. Yeah, there was always like 5 or 6 of us. We all knew each other. Christine Ebersole and Christine Andreas, Maureen Brennan are the names that come to my mind immediately. And we all knew each other, and we all liked each other, and they were always having us in, we all knew. And then there would be other new people who would come in. It was pretty competitive.
Can you put your finger on anything that caused Brigadoon not to be critically acclaimed?
It was actually a lot of Frank Rich loved it. He really loved it. He went on and on about Marty Vidnovic and myself. And a lot of, it wasn't the critical acclaim so much as it was, David Merrick wanted the Majestic Theater for 42nd Street. Yes. And so there were really strange things going on with the ticket sales. And yeah, and we were closed. We, you know, we
They
were.
play, I've heard in some other theaters, not this one, that they would sometimes tell people that tickets were not available to decrease the
Yeah.
take, so because there's a break-even point, and if you gross less than X amount of dollars, you then have to leave. They say, well, we don't want to leave. No, no, you're leaving. And but that they would go to that point of saying, oh, there are no tickets for Brigadoon. No, no, no.
Yeah, we were, those of
Whatever.
us in the company, we really loved the show, and the audience was extremely responsive, and we really felt cheated when it closed. Yeah, we kind of felt it wasn't fair, but that happens, you know. But it was an amazing experience. It, you know, I got a lot of attention and some award nominations, and the Theater World Award, I won it for that year. And yeah, so that was very, very important. It was an
Did the
important.
Music Man closely follow?
Actually, the Music Man was just before, and
Ah,
that's what really got my. I guess I got my name in the casting people's ears. You know, I was like the.
but to get that role, you had Christine and the same crowd wanting to be Guinevere.
I don't remember because I didn't remember all the people that were up for that. I just knew I had, I was kind of, I went in with a Mary Tyler Moore idea for, and I knew Barbara Cook. I had, at that time, she was starting to do all of her cabaret work. And that's how I got to know Wally Harper, who was her music director.
Wonderful, wonderful pianist.
Marvelous. So, I mean, I kind of, the score was difficult for some sopranos. For some reason, it just sat very easily with me. And I don't know, the auditions went very, very well, and they brought Dick in, Dick van Dyke, and I read with him, and, you know, he apparently liked what I was doing. And so, you know, I got it. We got on fantastically. And it just, again, it wasn't really highly received. We played the city center. But again,
Isn't that unusual? That because they couldn't keep it forever. You know, did you have a limit of the summer, or what time of year were you there?
It was the summer in the city center, and it just didn't. It was selling. It was another one of those things. The critics were not wild about it. You know, everyone wanted Dick to be Robert Preston, and he simply wasn't. It was a different take. So, you know, some of them didn't like it, but I mean, for me, it was remarkable. You know, when I sang with the quartet, with the barbershop quartet, Light a Rose and Dream of Now, that marvelous, the two songs melding together, that, and I got to meet Meredith Willson. That was very, very exciting. In fact, when I was doing My White Knight, which is a kind of a difficult song because it's a musical monologue, you know, an internal monologue that she's kind of talking to herself. You know, all I want is a plain man. All I want is a modest man, a quiet man, a simple man. At the end of it, I think I was doing it, we were in California, and Meredith Willson came into my dressing room, and he said he liked the energy, he liked what I was doing, and I was saying, oh, thank you, and it was wonderful. And he said, but will you do me a favor? And I said, well, yeah, what? You know, and he said, would you sing my triplets in My White Knight? And I went, whoa. So I went running to Milt Rosenstock, who was our music director, a very famous conductor. And I said, Meredith Willson wants me to sing his triplets. And so, you know, Milton brought out the score, and he looks at it. He says, you're not singing the triplets here. You're not singing the triplets here. You're not singing it. And I go, oh. And he said, and by the way, I told you that the first day we rehearsed. And I'm going, oh. So what Meredith Willson was actually asking me to do was going, my white knight, not a Lancelot, nor an angel with wings. So if I sang the triplets underneath me was a square kind of thing. So if the music, which was strings, was kind of going a square pulse underneath me when I'm going triplets on top of it, it was a marvelous, marvelous disharmony. It wasn't out of harmony, but it was a little something, dissonance is what I'm trying for. And it really was her confusion written in the music. I had missed that. I had missed that he had given me, by writing the notes that way, the Marion's confusion. So Milton and I went back and we redid it. And then the next night when I sang it, the audience like went nuts. And I'm going, oh my God, you know, I've been trying to phrase it and act it. And the composer gave it to me and I didn't see it. So
it wasn't that difficult once you realized.
But that was the lesson that I learned. So from then on, anytime I did any of the older shows, I looked specifically for the notation that the composer left me to see if there really was something that was actually given there. Richard Rodgers was really good about doing that. And certainly Stephen Sondheim is good about doing that. So some songs you can phrase around the notations, some you shouldn't. And that was a huge lesson. And I hoped to give that to my students. Before you start messing around with Hammerstein, with Richard Rodgers and with Fritz Loewe, make sure you look underneath and look at the music and see what they've given you, because they may have solved your problem right there. So.
And then after that, does the revival of Camelot with Richard Harris happen?
I'm sorry, what about Richard Harris?
Does the revival follow?
Yes, and then after
Brigadoon.
Okay, so that one they did ask me. That one, I was asked to come in. Christine Ebersole had been playing Guinevere with Richard Burton, and then Burton left after a year. They had played New York and they had toured, and after a year, which was his contract, he was up. Christine stayed on a little bit longer. They hired Richard Harris to come in, and they were going to hire a Guinevere to come in with Richard. So it would be two new people coming, and we would tour for about a year and then come back to New York. So that I was asked to come in and be Richard's Guinevere. And yep.
Did you know it was going to be filmed?
No, we didn't know that until we got back into New York. And then HBO came to us and said, you know.
That's great. That's the thing we can see the most of you, I guess, is to see the Camelot.
Right. There's actually a copy of the Brigadoon online. You can search for it, but it's out there. The whole thing. I'm surprised they haven't taken off, but it's there. But yes, the legal thing.
No one complains if no one complains.
Yes.
So leave it out there.
So, but the nice thing about well, both of them, in fact, the stage versions and the film versions frequently don't always match, you know, ideally. So the film version of Camelot is a little different than what Rodgers and Hammerstein actually put out the first time. See, in the film, for Guinevere and Lancelot, they actually get together. It happens. In the story that you know, Lerner and Loewe wrote for the stage, it's in their mind. It might be wishing for it. We call that the Catholic sin of intention. It didn't happen, but in a way they kind of, you know, fantasized, mused on it. You know, they were caught together. So even though the actual act never happened, it was still treason. It was still a sin. So you know, but that's a big difference. So
they cut some of the plot in the second version?
No.
Well,
they cut one of the songs. They cut one of Guinevere's songs, "Take Me to the Fair," where she sings to the. They did cut that, but there was a couple of speeches that Guinevere had that they did cut in some versions, stage versions, that they didn't cut when we did it. And I was, you know, Lerner came back. He had seen it several times on the tour in New York, and he would send little messages back, you know, like really enjoyed it, or, you know, I can understand you. I mean, he would always be saying things like that, and it was very sweet. Yeah.
Did you film this like in Brooklyn, or where was Camelot filmed?
In the theater. It was filmed in the Winter Garden.
Oh.
Yeah, in the Winter Garden. Yeah.
Over how long a period would you guess?
It was 10 days. It was 10 days. Yeah, we shut it down for 10 days. And they filmed it more like a film than they didn't just like run through it. So we kind of did it scene by scene because they had cameras on stage. And, you know.
But they did do it in chronological order?
No, it depended because, you know, yeah, no, not really. It depended on the sets, you know. So if they had set up a set, they wanted to do all the scenes in that set, and, you know, very much like but when they tied it together, it was pretty much in order. But the nice thing about it is it's there to compare. So like when I was teaching again, and many of my colleagues teaching musical theater history, they can teach the libretto and say, okay, so this HBO version with, Bussert and Harris is what was written for the stage. This version over here, directed by Josh Logan, was readapted for the film. So the students can, so both things are represented online so they can study it. And a similar thing with the Brigadoon. There is a version of what we did in the revival so the students can see what the stage version looked like, and then they can go and see Sid Charisse and Gene Kelly do the movie, which was a totally different story. So the comparisons I think are important.
When I talked a couple of times to Alan J. Lerner, which was unbelievable. I said, I'm sitting in front of Alan J. Lerner, and he told me the things like he always wanted to write Little Abner before there was a Little Abner. Now, imagine his approach of Johnny Mercer was very clever, and so now Jay Lerner can be very clever. And did you ever do On a Clear Day? Did you ever sing On a Clear Day anywhere?
No, I've sung the music, but I've never done the role. Yeah, I've sung the music. Yeah.
I mean, Hurry, It's Lovely Up Here. Geranium and Tranium, and wonderful things. And
he was brilliant with lyric. He, again, he loved the Gilbert and Sullivan thread in a lot of his work, and he was very, very careful, which is another thing to consider when you're acting it, is who is your lyricist? Irving Berlin was a brilliant American songwriter, and he wrote emotionally, but you can't. His lyrics do a different thing. His music does a different thing. Alan J. Lerner's lyrics are very well chosen and particular, and bring out very just marvelous images. And his word play. So the more you know about how language works, the more you can appreciate someone like Cole Porter, like Mr. Lerner, like Mr. Hammerstein, all of these gentlemen, and actually, what was he, Dorothy Fields, and some of they were very careful and about what they put in your mouth, and I think that's what's so exciting about working on that repertoire for me.
Did you ever mention to Alan when you did either Brigadoon or Camelot how you had been in Lolita?
Oh yeah, he knew that. Oh yeah, he knew. Oh, he knew me.
That amusing,
in fact, there was I did a couple of auditions for some musical friends of his, and he had recommended me, get Meg, because she'll do this fast for you. So oh yeah, no, he knew me. Yeah.
So then after that, you do a lot of touring?
After those things, I had my first child, and I worked around locally, and I did HMS Pinafore for almost a year up in Canada when my daughter was in kindergarten, and toured up there, and then came down here, and that was with Ron Moody. I played Josephine the soprano opposite Ron Moody. And we did 5 or 6 stops in Canada, and then 3 or 4 stops here. We did come into New York. That was another big blow up. We were supposed to, but it was a terrific, Gilbert and Sullivan made, it was fun, like Joe Papp's Pirates, but not as silly.
They bring in some modern references occasionally?
No, they didn't. No, but so Ron Moody was also from that music hall era. In fact, pantomime, which is English pantomime. So he was very good at playing the clown when he played Sir Joseph Porter. So the Admiral of the Navy, who should never have been Admiral of the Navy. And he was very, very funny, and he would do all sorts of physical tricks and have things tricked. So when he walked under something, his hat would go off, and then he would try to do this, and he'd look around for his hat. So all this wonderful musical business. He's
famous for having been involved with Oliver. He was the original Oliver, and then he did the movie of Oliver.
Faggot, yeah.
And what other shows did you do?
Oh dear.
at a time?
There was a musical of called Lucy's Lapses, which I did it was a new piece, and it was about dementia. It was about Alzheimer's disease, and so really, really,
1990, this is ahead of its time at that point.
yeah, that
People
was,
have to be educated as to what was going on.
yeah, yeah. And then I've done, you know, then I started teaching at NYU. I had another child, and I basically did a lot of summer work. I worked a lot at Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera and did Carousel up there. Did a lot of repeats of things. I started Paper Mill. I did Mother Abbess in Sound of Music, and I've done 5 different productions of that. Last year, I was in Utah for 5 months doing it, the outdoor theater Tuacahn in the southern Utah, doing Sound of Music in rep with 2 Disney shows, and that was for 5 months. We did that outdoors. It was amazing.
What were the 2 shows it was in rep with?
It was there were Disney shows. It was the Mermaid, and then it was called When You Wish, which was a reference to When You Wish Upon a Star, but it was a combination of all the Disney production shows. It was hysterical. They had Disney's permission to put it together. So it was from every movie and every Broadway show that was Disney. It was the big production number. So it was like Be Our Guest was in it, and then they would do Chim Chim Marie, and then it was just a riot. The best part of it was that all of the ensemble people all got a chance to step out and be a star, because it was a different star for each production number, and that was just great. So yeah, one day was one show, and the next show, and the third day would be Sound of Music, and then they would start over again. It was huge theater. It seated 2,000, and the background was this big red mountain. So when I sang Climb Every Mountain, I mean, right above me was this huge mountain, and it was like an amazing experience. So that's what's going on now.
What sort of, did you do individual songs at NYU with students, or productions? How?
No, I taught acting to singers. So I taught a little bit of Stanislavski, an awful lot of Michael Chekhov work, how to act Shakespeare, those kinds of things. That's what I taught. For a while, I taught musical theater history, but then we brought in John Kenrick, who was musicals101.com, and he was terrific. And so he took over that aspect. And I directed quite a lot. I directed some old things like Oh, What a Lovely War, or Bloomer Girl. I was interested in some of those old kind of shows. What else? I brought Richard Maltby in, and
some of these done at the Fritz Loewe Theater on 4th Street?
The Playhouse.
The one on Broadway?
No, the one on McDougal. The Provincetown Playhouse. That's where I did most of the work. Or then we had a black box also on campus there that I did some of them. About 6 or 7 shows, I wasn't one of the big directors. I sort of did the smaller things. I did Closer Than Ever, because I did Closer Than Ever with Maltby and Shire, and I did it on, which requires 4 people. I did it with I think 9 students, and we brought Richard Maltby in to chat with them, and so that was kind of fun. So yeah, it was a terrific, I just retired from there in January. And I had some things lined up before the COVID, so we'll see what happens.
You're planning on singing Climb Every Mountain as long as there are productions of Sound of Music?
Oh, Bruce, there are some wonderful roles out there. Mrs. Higgins is a really good role. There's some pretty cool roles out there that.
So you'd rather not just do.
Oh no! I would never want to just do something. I mean, but see, I haven't played all those things yet.
How many numbers are you actually in the show? You're in the beginning.
Oh, for Mother Abbess?
Right.
Yeah, it's How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria is the first thing she sings. And then she sings My Favorite Things with Maria. That's different from the film. And then at the end of Act 1, she sings Climb Every Mountain. And then in Act 2, she kind of helps out at the her wedding, at Maria's wedding, and she kind of sings in the background. And at the end of the show, she comes back and she reprises Climb Every Mountain. That's all. Yeah. But they're good pieces.
So what are you currently doing to occupy yourself waiting for?
A lot. I actually did a one-day gig on The Equalizer, which Queen Latifah is starring in.
Oh.
I did that last Monday. It's a TV. They're redoing it with her as the lead. And I had a tiny little part, but that was fine. I'm going to, when Sharon Playhouse opens back up in Connecticut, I'm going to go up there and do Brigadoon, but probably play Mr. Lundy. Mr. Lundy will be Mrs. Lundy. And I did that at NYU. It's a marvelous gender swap. It works really well. And I am doing some teaching, Zooming. I'm still working with a lot of young people, some, you know, and
You're taking acting students? So you have a young girl who's part of, are you taking acting students to Zoom?
Yes, yes. I have actually two international students right now who are working on monologues to audition for programs in the US, you know, I'm helping them out. And I have some workshops that I usually go to colleges and teach. I can't do that now because of what's going on, but my retirement was meant to open up more time so I could do the kind of things that I wanted to do. So that kind of got sank, shall we say. But I'm keeping busy, and there's a lot. It's a lot I will be doing when things, you know, open up a bit. So right now,
Your husband?
No, I don't have one of those. I don't have one of those.
Oh.
I have 2 children, so
Okay.
I've been a single mom for a long time.
Where are they currently?
My daughter is in Virginia, and she has 2 children. And my son is here, and he's figuring out some things, and found a lady, and will be getting married sometime soon. And yeah, they're doing great.
Did your daughter have a soprano voice from you?
She does, but she didn't do it. She became a psychologist.
But did she at some point sing?
Oh, she has a wonderful voice, but that wasn't where her.
No, but she do any roles that you had done? Did she do?
No, she worked up in Westchester Broadway in a couple of, you know, in their Christmas shows when she was young. She didn't have the, you know, she watched me. Maybe that changed her mind. I don't know. Yeah, and my son is, you know, a really good drummer. He's really amazing. Yeah, but no, they have other interests, and they're very good at them.
Okay, again, I appreciate you taking your time and talking about this, and I'll be in touch with you, sending you a copy of Some Things Afoot so you can.
Yeah, send me 2 copies. Send me 2 copies.
I will do so. Thank you.
Okay, Bruce, thank you so much for what you do. I mean, you're doing some really important work here, and, you know, capturing these things that might go away, you know, and also highlighting people who have worked in these shows that are still around. So bless you for that. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.